Hello and welcome back to the page. I'm Ashriel Moore, the ambassador of the African Diaspora Collective right here in Israel. Now, before we watch this next video, I just want to make mention of one small thing, right? From the day of October 7th and going forward, all of the communities of African ancestry residing here in Israel spoke with one voice, saying the exact same thing. Whether you're from the African Hebrew Israelite community in Dimona, African American Jew, asylum seeker from Sudan and from Eritrea, foreign worker from Tanzania or other places, Beta Israel Ethiopian, Afro-Bedouin, Afro-Palestine, it really didn't make any. We were all saying the exact same thing about the atrocities that are taking place on that day. When at the same time, Hamas and others were targeting people of African ancestry outside of Israel, looking to gain their support for these atrocities, claiming that this was a natural response to oppression, to colonization, to degradation, to being locked up in Gaza, as they call it. And we were saying, we were calling BS. No, that's not, this is not that. And most people couldn't understand what it is that we're talking about. And they couldn't, up until this very day, they couldn't understand what we were talking about because they go right into the whataboutism. What about what took place in Gaza? But they don't realize that from the moment that these atrocities took place here in Israel, there were people who were celebrating on the streets of the world as if some grand plan had unfolded and some great idea had been taken place, had been implemented here in Israel by just killing civilians at a party, in their homes, on the kibbutzim, in the cities, walking down the street, and you know, couldn't drive down the street, closing down both sides of the streets. We really couldn't understand this, and we knew we were saying that obviously we are just as much a target as anybody else residing here. But they were talking to people of African ancestry outside and getting them to support these causes, as if we have some common cause, something that we're working on together. As they call it, black and brown people on the outside. So we need to align ourselves, or we need to align ourselves with their agenda, with the Hamas agenda, claiming that this is the Palestinian cause, which was absolute nonsense. But now people are starting to wake up. Now people are starting to realize everything that we've said for 2 years now. And they're now starting to get it. So let's watch this video first of all, and then we'll talk about it afterwards.
So my involvement for Pro-Palestine pre-October 7th was very minimal. It was just like I would make, posts that would say free Palestine or, but it was more so kind of like generic activist post. And I didn't really necessarily understand all of the conflict of what was going on in Palestine or how complicated it was. On October 7th, that day, I didn't truly receive a lot of information about what was going on the ground in Israel. I had initially thought Gaza got attacked with the amount of Palestinian flags that I had seen on my social media, and a lot of people showing early support, immediate support for Palestine. There was a lot of misinformation being spread about what happened on October 7th. And one of the things I had remembered believing was that majority of the people that were slaughtered on that day were IDF soldiers, and that it was a battle, and that Hamas was martyrs. And their justification for calling them IDF soldiers was that, essentially in Israel, that there's mandatory service, and so essentially all Israelis are IDF soldiers. And it was, again, it was a lot of twisting the logic in order to fit a more appetizing narrative. So many leftists and so many progressives were pro-Palestine out of the gate. I just assumed that, as a leftist, that I should also be pro-Palestine, even if I don't know all of the facts. That I would soon be able to, I would soon be able to gather more information as it was getting released, and then learn about it. So when I first showed support, I truly didn't know what I was supporting, and I didn't understand what was October 7th as a whole. there was an opportunity to go to LA to see the Nova Music Festival exhibit. And when I had first seen this, I just was like, oh, I wanted to see, the Israeli propaganda and see what, they're talking about for October 7th, because again, it was like kind of drilled and ingrained in us that like October 7th was not truly like a big deal. I was super curious, and I just decided to sign up and see for myself. But again, I was thinking that this was still like propaganda, and that this was like they're like leading us to this this conclusion that they wanted us to have. And so I was still like kind of resistant to it. And so when we got inside of the exhibit itself, I think that was truly when I had experienced like the grief and the amount of empathy for what had happened. And I truly did not know how horrific October 7th was. I never saw any of this footage on my feed. I've never saw anyone repost it. I didn't know even about the Nova Music Festival itself. And again, there was so much misinformation on what October 7th was. Like I had shared about like that it was mainly soldiers being killed, and then finding out that it was civilians, and it was people my age that were just dancing and then fleeing for their lives. I was in shock. And in a way I felt so like misguided by the pro-Palestine movement, because I was like, why haven't we talked about this? Why haven't we like truly like had a discussion and even like condemned what had happened? And I realized that there's like definitely two truths to this story, and what I understood, there's so much more information that I just didn't know. And I think that my story isn't unique on the pro-Palestine side. I think that there's a lot of people that joined the movement without having all of these facts.
So clearly, what you notice is a pattern, right? The pattern is that you should not ask any questions, question anything that has to do with the pro-Palestine movement. You should not want to seek to have more information to understand better the nuances that are on the grounds. Everything is black and white. You shouldn't ask any questions. This is what it is. Oppressed, oppressor. These are the lenses that you should be looking through, and that's it. Nobody was harmed outside of military soldiers and military infrastructure. Nobody else was targeted. Nobody else was harmed. That was it. It wasn't a big deal. It was a military operation, as they had mentioned in their manifesto and what was called the Our Narrative, the Al-Aqsa Flood. They were claiming that they did not target any children, any civilians, elderly people, women, because as far as Islam is concerned, this is something that is very near and dear to them, which is absolute nonsense, because that's exactly what they did on that day, and there's enough proof to be able to share and to show. And this is information and documentation that was coming from their GoPro cameras, not anybody else. They were the ones who actually broadcasting these things. But nonetheless, in these encampments and all these pro-Palestine movements, you couldn't ask any questions about Hamas, about what happened on October 7th. The sister, she thought, based on the response, that Gaza had been attacked on October 7th. You see how crazy that is? How you could take a narrative and actually be able to manufacture it in such a way where people are not even aware of the reality on the ground. What's actually happening? People are out protesting against what? Waving flags where you're celebrating the slaughtering of innocent human beings. And then when there's a retaliation from Israel, now you're going out to protest against the retaliation of innocent human beings dying. Can you see the cognitive dissonance in how these humanitarians, right, were carrying these two realities that are very similar? No. Some people deserve to die because they just happen to be living in a place where, as far as the government is concerned, they hadn't been treating other people right. So now they're going to have to bear the brunt of what their government has been carrying out, or what their government has been doing. But on the other side, no. It was Hamas they were doing. So the other Palestinian innocent people should not be involved with anything that's happening. You should target and only go after Hamas. Can you see the hypocrisy? Our sister realized it. She said, let me go and see for myself. Not let me go see for myself because I realized that I'm very uninformed about the reality. Let me go see because I want to see how the propaganda from Israel is going to be manufactured. But then she goes and she realizes that a lot of information has actually not been shared. And she was trying to realize or trying to understand, why hasn't it been actually shared? What was the reason why I didn't know about October 7th? I didn't know about these young people who were just dancing at a music festival. I didn't know that they were fleeing for their lives and they were being slaughtered. They were being chased down. I didn't know about innocent people in their homes being slaughtered. I didn't know. I was told that it was a military operation and only soldiers were killed. But then, plot twist, everybody is a soldier. That's how we sold it. Everybody is so. Why is everybody a soldier? Because there is military, there was obligatory military service in Israel, right? So that means that because there's military service that's obligated, any baby from the age of babyhood up until 18, you are expected to be drafted into the military at one point or another. So that makes you a legit target. Anybody from 18 until 20 for women, 18 until 21 for men, because you're actively serving, even though you're not on duty at the moment, but because you are part of the institution, you are a liable target. And then anybody from 21 for men and 20 for females, you up until 80, 90, 100, you're also a legitimate target because you served at one point or another in the IDF. Some are still probably serving in reserve every now and then, up until you're about 40 or so years of age. But then after that, obviously, I mean, you're an elderly person, retire, whatever else, at the ages of 60, 70, not after 40, right? You continue to work in your regular job and continue to live your life. You have family, you have children, you have, everything. You're living your life. And most people are not even combat soldiers. Most people, for every one combat soldier, you may have about 9 soldiers who are not combat, like the people who are fixing food, the chefs, the cooks, the people who are responsible for cleaning up the garden, the people who are standing on the watchtowers, right? The people who are in telecommunications, the people who are in education, they're legitimate targets as well. So everybody's a legitimate target. That's the plot twist, right? Everybody's a legitimate target because, but that same logic doesn't apply, for example, on the Hamas side, wherein you say, okay, well, who's actually a combatant? Is it the children, like 14, 15 years of age? Is it the children who are like 14, 15, 16 years of age who are carrying AK-47s and spraying people wherever they are? Is it just the men who are, from 20 and up? Are there females who are also, because like in the IDF, you have female soldiers as well. So like, are there any female soldiers in Hamas, or is everybody just males, men? I mean, who's the targets here? Are we looking for people who are in uniform because they don't wear uniforms? Are we looking for people who are in uniforms? Or do we target people who are shooting at us, and then once they get killed, then they have on civilian clothing? So as far as everybody's concerned, they are civilians. I mean, what about the people who are hiding behind civilians, right? In going underground in these tunnels that are right under the cities and houses, and the entrances and or the exits of some of these tunnels are like right inside of a bathroom of somebody's home, or right inside of the library of a school, or right inside or right under a hospital, or right inside of a mosque. I mean, do these things really matter? Do they count, or are these not legit targets? My sister she had the ability to be able to now discern for herself because she had access to more information that she didn't know beforehand. And that's why it's so important to actually find out, gain all of the knowledge, look at, all of the materials, see what is not actually being said. Now I know that some people are going to have a different perspective than I do, than we do as people of African ancestry, because I represent the people of African ancestry here in Israel. And I'm sure that people are going to have a different perspective on Israel, on the conflict, on everything that's taking place here from the outside, because they don't live here, right? Whoever you are, you're going to have a different perspective, and you could have whatever perspective you have. But we have a perspective, a lived experience. And you're not going to, a lived experience trumps everything else. I don't care what you read. I don't care what you've heard. I don't care what you've seen on TV. I'm talking about a lived experience, not only of people who reside in Israel, also people who reside, if you want to talk about Palestinians, Afro-Palestinians who are experiencing terrible things at the hands of their Palestinian leadership. So people of African ancestry, really, you have no business getting involved in anything that's taking place on this end if we're not just looking at what is unfolding, right? How are people of African ancestry being affected by everything that's taking place here? If you say that we're looking at it because there is a common cause, because we're looking at oppression, because we're looking at degradation, because we're looking at all these other buzzwords that people of African ancestry, as soon as we hear them, we kind of, because we know what these things mean. So you wouldn't be able to actually treat Israel or the Palestinian side, because we have people of African ancestry who are on both ends, who are experiencing these things on both sides. Yes, in Israel, you have people of African ancestry who are experiencing some discrimination, right? Racism as well. And they're out protesting and fighting against these things actively, not to totally dismantle the state of Israel, but to dismantle these institutions that are operating in such a way that is unjust. But they love their land. They love this country. People of African ancestry who reside here love it. Our brothers and sisters, Afro-Palestinians, who are mostly, say, in what people call the West Bank. I actually refer to it as Judea and Samaria because that's the biblical name of the place. That's the name of the place ordinarily and generally. I mean, that's this whenever you read about these things, that this is the place that you're talking about. The name, the West Bank, was actually given to the place by King Abdullah I, and it simply denoted where it was geographically in comparison to Jordan or Transjordan. So Transjordan, quote unquote, is on the east side of the bank, and so this area they're referring to is on the west side of the bank. And because at one point up until 1967, Jordan controlled this entire space on both sides of the bank, then as far as they were concerned, it was politically expedient to refer to the area as the West Bank. But that's not a name, an ancestral name, a historical name of this area. It was just a name that was given to it by King Faisal, by King Abdullah I, because it was just part of his kingdom, right? The Hashemite kingdom, or the Transjordan or Jordan, however people refer to it as. But nonetheless, though, people are now starting to wake up to realize the realities of what we have been talking about for the longest. And now you really actually get to see it for yourself and get to hear it for yourself. That's why we always suggest for people, come to Israel, come visit, come see for yourself, come try and understand things on the grounds that you might have a hard time understanding by being so far away and listening to the news outlets that lie to us all the time about everything. But for the first time, they're telling the truth now about a reality. Come on now. So the sister was just sharing that she has now been exposed to more. And what do they say? When you know better, then you do better. So when you have more information, when you're privy to more details, then you now know how to make an educated decision in regards to where you stand on an issue based on the information that you actually have. She didn't have any information beforehand, and so she chose the way that she chose. Now that she have more information, she chose a different path. This is not unique to her. There are a lot of other people, and I'm going to be sharing with you all. There are a lot of people who are in my DM all the time about these things. That they're now receiving more information. They're doing a little more research. They're going deeper into it. And they're realizing that they've actually been taken down a rabbit hole. They've been lied to in regards to the realities. And now that they're being more exposed to it, they have the ability now to be able to make a more calculated decision based on the information as opposed to just being propagandized. And people are talking about people who live in Israel. How much are they paying you? No, that's absolute nonsense. That's nonsense. I mean, for somebody to live in Israel and to speak about the realities that they are experiencing here in Israel and to share those with people on the outside, and then people on the outside say that somebody has to be paying you because otherwise, because you are threatened by these organizations that are trying to harm you and everybody else. And how do we know that? Because everybody who's residing here were targeted and still are targeted. And it didn't start on October 7th. People have been targeted for years on suicide buses or on suicide bombings on buses, suicide bombings in restaurants, in malls, just walking down the street, randomly being shot at in the middle of cities, all of these things. People of African ancestry also have experienced these things. So we're talking from experience. We're not talking about, something that we've heard or somebody has shared some details and some information with us. And as a result, now we've been propagandized and reprogrammed. And so as a result, no. We're talking about our experience. And if anybody experienced something, for example, in New York, they have the right to speak about their experience. In Chicago, they have the right to speak about their experience. In London, they have the right to speak about their experience. In China, they have the right to speak about their experience. In Nigeria. So everybody, wherever they are in the world, can speak about their experience, as opposed to people here residing in Israel who are not involved in the conflict, who's not trying to be involved in the conflict. Majority of the people are just living their lives. And the great majority of the people were born and raised here and inherited this reality. And so because we inherited this reality, we don't have a right to share our perspectives on it? I think not. We'll continue to share our perspectives on the realities on the grounds here as they actually are. And in time, when people make the calculated decision to actually go into research more on their own, they'll be actually exposed also to realities. And then whatever they decide to do once they have more access to the information, because obviously all the information is very accessible wherever you are. There's a saturation of information, but people choose, right, because of their confirmation biases, to consume information that actually confirms what they already think or where they've already positioned themselves, as opposed to actually being open to receive information that will give them a better perspective. And based on that information, they would then be able to make a calculated decision on where they stand on the matter. I suggest that you do the latter. Until then, thank you so much for continuing to follow me on this journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, leave a comment below, and I'll be looking forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, take care.